I was one of these guys that left school, had messed around at school, been a bit of a fool. So I was a piano player in a brothel. Does that change, make people reflect? Why do you need us to do that? We've been doing this job for ages. People think accountants are boring.
Mervyn Ward, high-achieving professional with career in finance, auditing, coaching athletes.
Is this one of those Barry White moments where I go, "Hey camera, I love you"?
Welcome to Are You Like Me, the podcast where we dive into lives of extraordinary individuals and discover what makes them unique. I'm your host Patrick, and today I'm joined with Mervyn Ward. Prepare to be inspired. He's an extraordinary individual whose journey traverses the corridors of power, the halls of academia, and the tracks of athletic competition. Meet the man who's redefining what it means to go the distance in life and on a track. Welcome, Merv. It is really a pleasure having you here. We started a little bit earlier and we heard this Barry voice. And that was brilliant, and I hope I'll just share that in our bloopers. You have very diverse career and you did a lot of things, and I know that you are also contributing to academia, which is very, very important in my personal opinion. But I would like to give our guests a little bit of glimpse how it happened and what roads led you to the point where you are right now.
Well, if I give a brief pocket history, I was one of these guys that left school, had messed around at school, been a bit of a fool, not quite the class fool, but nearly there. And then suddenly things got serious because you had to get a job and you had to work. And the thing that sort of cottoned on to me very quickly was the guys in the offices, or rather nicer offices, had got qualifications that I didn't have. And that's what got them into those offices. So I sort of quickly cottoned on to the idea that, hey, study's not a bad thing. So that's pretty much where it started. So I went through local government, atomic energy, university, various non-departmental public bodies, ultimately finished up as a civil servant. But en route, I decorated that trajectory with different qualifications to aid where I was going, what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it. So it's made up quite a good story.
So when I read that you've been an auditor, and now that you mentioned that you've been playing around and not being, the best as you could be, it looks like you turned into something completely different. And that reminds me, my wife loves Columbo. And Columbo in one of the episodes is saying that he used to play jokes and do bad things, not bad, but kind of too many jokes. And he has taken the path of law enforcement just to pay the debt. Is it the case with you, or is it?
No, I wouldn't say this is quite that way. I think it was a matter of growing up. Certainly, when I was a 16-year-old, 17-year-old opinionated fool, I sort of had to grow up because there were things that were going to come on in life at some stage, like having a decent job, buying a house, having a career. Fortunately, being a child born in the mid-50s and having the opportunity that was given to people working in the 70s, yes, there was an opportunity to have what was then a conventional career. And I rode on the back of that and enjoyed it.
When you are saying full, you know that I would like to deep insights into jokes that you made, but only if you're comfortable. Is it like you were not going to school and just avoiding, or?
No, I went to school every day. I love school. Why would you not love school? Your friends were there.
That's a valid point. Yeah. When you have friends and you're playing around with them.
That's it. It's just that there were little bits of avoidance of certain lessons because there were more exciting things to do.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
We had some conversations about learning, and I remember when my mother was saying that, I've been again summoned to school just because he didn't like the classes of literature. He preferred personal activities at that time.
Yeah.
And I said, yes. I just felt like this is better because it was sunny.
yeah, I get that.
And, you know, we are trying to tailor the language model, the learning model to everyone, because we recognize at some point in our universe that different people learn in a different manner.
Absolutely.
And I think that it is not always 100% fault of a student or pupil or whoever or learner. It is sometimes the environment that is not supporting their needs at that point in time. Do you think that is the case? I'm just trying to justify why I wasn't doing not the things that I should be doing at school.
Well, having been on both sides of the education playground, so to speak, the student and the tutor, if a tutor's got 20 or 30 people or young people in a classroom, there's not always time to accommodate the one that wants to play when you've got 20 and others that want to learn. So yeah, there's a juggling act, and it's a matter of classroom management and engagement for that person to bring others in. But sometimes they may still want to play.
And what we do with them then?
Ooh, dear me. Try and convince them that the subject matter that you're offering is fun. That's the way to get it.
I think, something big, because literally when we are younger, and I can relate to situations in any offices, nice and not so nice, when you introduce a little bit of fun and some sort of ownership of thing that they do. So when we have like projects or workshops at school, at universities, or even if we have brainstorming sessions at work, and we have cookies and we have some jokes here and there, it sounds like a better environment, and this creativity is much higher.
Yeah, I guess the cookies and jokes make for a breakout session, which is pretty good. I could go with that. You just don't want too many spillages in the classroom. But certainly, I think the thing is, when you've been at school from probably the age 4 or 5, going up towards 16, nowadays 18, compulsory ed and all that type of thing, you maybe get a bit tired with the same subjects that you've seen year in, year out. And it's only when you break out of that mould into different, newer subjects that are potentially immediately interesting to you. The economics, the statistics, the sociology, these things. It's just like a new playground. You can sort of learn lots of things that are genuinely interesting, and it's just finding those things.
I agree with this, and I'll tell you why. I mentioned to you earlier that I was always the person who was rather on humane side of literature, a little bit of geography, history, and I really had like pleasure reading and learning that. Although I never liked descriptions in literature, I was looking like more for just solid facts. So that's kind of a contrary to being literate.
Yeah, a bit of a mix in literature and science there.
Yes, it was a bit like that. And I only see values in books, which were kind of user guides, because I had like immediate knowledge and skill that was needed to perform, I don't know, changing channels in a TV at that time. But I find out that in physics and maths, when they moved me to a first table, just because I was chatting with my friends too often, I started to understand that like very, very quickly. And I started to enjoy that. And I put like gamification with my colleague next to me, who was also not so good in physics, but apparently we were really good at physics at some point. And we were having these challenges when we had a question and we were just writing answers. Who is quicker? Who just made better assumptions? Whose, I don't know, end result is correct? And we started to enjoy that. And I think that teacher was a little bit confused because we used to be these two guys chatting at the corner, in a corner of the hall. And then you are just trying to crack it. And I always thought, is it a teacher? Is it the environment, like we mentioned, or is it just finding the element that will just spark the interest? And whose role is in that? Is it like 50-50 teacher, or is it just us learners?
I think it's a mixture of work and play. There's nothing more than that, just a mixture of work and play.
And I had a guest who mentioned that wherever they had in their own environment of organization, the only good teams were the ones who had some fun. And there was the director who was oversteering the group of different teams, and he had some natural, she thought at that time, abilities to drop jokes here and there. And then after years, she met him again, and he said, no, that was orchestrated. And you literally went to say what? Just to spark something. So that's a skill to make mundane work fun.
Yeah. We used to have a tutor for law over at Warrington, and law can be quite dry on occasion. And he would, if you like, syncopate his delivery with jokes. So, probably every 10 or 12 minutes, a new joke would be slipped in, and it would just get people going. I mean, I've seen that taken to extremes. I mean, on one occasion when I worked at as the auditor for Manchester University, I was doing some work in the audiology section, and given that this was Manchester, this open drawer seemed to have a gun in it, and I was a little bit worried about this concept of a gun in Manchester, but it was a starting pistol. And the technician that was delivering these lessons would say, well, if people are getting a little bit lazy, if they're getting a bit lethargic, shoot a round off, it tends to wake them up. I'm not sure it's the best approach, but it seemed to keep people awake.
Awake, definitely, and then you have anecdotes after all. But I wouldn't be in the classroom.
I would not recommend it. And nowadays, you'd probably be arrested or worse. Dear me.
I remember one person saying to me that there was a trumpet. Oh, I know exactly who it was. It was Ian Carroll, and he had kind of gatherings in Manchester, and it was about agility, lean manufacturing, methods of working. And when it was starting to be like dry and topics were not interesting, he was just doing the trumpet. I don't know what he was doing with that because he wasn't skilled maybe, but it worked.
Whatever it takes to just get people back on board, if things are starting to drift, even doing my initial teacher, Cert Ed, to be a further education lecturer, one of the chaps that was tutoring us would say, well, when you've got maybe 20 young people in a room or mixed age room, group of further education students in a room, how do you draw their attention to sort of get them to recognize that, hey guys, it is the time to start this class, it is the time to do something? And he would say, it's not just a matter of making a motion, so it's a visual because people might not be looking, so there's got to be some sound as well. So he would always stand, move a table or a chair, which just made some loud noise that sort of got people to step back and say, well, hey, something's happening. And then it got their attention. I mean, I've even seen it with a young guy giving tutoring to a swimming group, a starter swimming group. And his idea was that he would point his finger in the air and he would wave his finger around and around and around. And then ultimately he'd touch his nose with it. Because by the time he touched his nose with it, all the young people were watching his finger go round, and then he'd drawn their attention to his nose, so he'd got them looking at his face, and he could address them.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I've used it, and it works. It is fascinating.
Oh, how many tricks you have in a sleeve about getting people attention?
Well, you notice I've got short sleeves on today, but there are tricks up the sleeve. Yeah.
Oh, I think that gathering attention is a skill.
Oh, yeah.
It is. And I know that it's much easier when you have these students which are constantly looking into you, in your eyes or in the table and right, okay, I know you'll be just recording everything that I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I hope that as a teachers, there's always this student which is just distracted. I've been the one. And you think like, okay, if I can turn his lack of attention, lack of focus, lack of knowledge into something, that's kind of an achievement for a teacher. And
it's just one of those things. It's whatever it takes to get someone on board so that even if they're not on board for the whole lesson, if they take something from that lesson away that lodges, that sticks, that's retained and can be brought back at some future stage, then that's a plus.
So I have 3 questions.
Go on, go for it.
All right, and I don't know in which order I should ask. You mentioned something that will stick, and I think that's the second question. The first one is how you recognize which technique will work with a particular group or a student. I know that it comes from experience and it's natural after a while, but at some point you needed to understand what is the skill, how you just call this skill or ability, characteristics.
I guess what people studying would call is reflection. Certainly, from coaching and things like that, we're urged all the time to reflect on what we've done, how we've done it, what worked, how well it worked, what would we do differently. And there lies the rub. You can't assume that because something's worked well with one person or one group on one occasion, it will work the same or as well with other groups and other individuals on other occasions. You just can't make that assumption. So there's always a little bit about testing, feeling, sensing, being sensitive to feedback, and just trying to work out what's the key into this person.
What triggers them?
Yeah.
Do you have an example what won't work? And
what won't work?
Yes, and maybe some examples like from your experience that, I thought it would be a good idea to use, maybe not technique, but just to act like that, but it didn't work and you couldn't find what triggered?
Yeah, I think let's try and use an example from say sport. You've got a mixed ability group in sport, but you've got them all doing the same exercise. So we may be doing what we used to call Indian file, but maybe that's a frowned on term now. Maybe you've got to say like a follow me style, where you've got maybe 5 people, 6 people running in a row, and the guy from the back has to make an effort to overtake the others, peel back in. When they finish their effort, the next one from the back makes an effort and falls in at the front, and you just keep doing this continuously. Great idea. Can cope with mixed abilities to a point. But unfortunately, I used it on one occasion, and one of the young ladies just could not overtake. The extent of her ability, the extent of her speed was insufficient to get past the group, and she hurt herself. Yeah, so you learn from that you've got to do things differently. Nowadays, similar sort of situation, coaching situation again with mixed abilities. Some people older, younger, faster, slower. Yeah, I wouldn't say we're going to go out and we're going to do 10 of these or we're going to do 12 of those. I'd say we're going to do this exercise for 10 minutes. And it doesn't matter if you're at the faster end and in your 10 minutes you get 8 of these repetitions done, or if you're at the slower end and you get 6 repetitions done. Hey, we're all trying hard. So you learn from one experience of making a mistake, which risked hurting someone, which is not what you're there to train for. You're training to get fit and to get faster. You're not training to get injured. You learn from that error. You change it. You try it in a different way. If it works, fine, you might retain it. If it doesn't work, hey, it's confined to the scrap heap until you've got a different group.
With failing fast but safely. It's kind of a
Yeah.
what I'm gathering, and then reflecting why did something happen and what I can do differently.
Absolutely.
What would you say to a student or person, athlete, someone who does have aspiration and ambition high, which is not connected to their abilities, but they still have this attitude of, I want to be a winner, I want to do it, but their abilities are not there, like, obviously.
Well, one of the questions about coaching is the sort of philosophy of coaching. And most coaches would say their role is to try and help the athlete, whatever sports person it is, be the best they can. So we've all got some sort of possibility boundary. You know, there is that wonderful arc of boundary which you can perform up to, but you're very, very unlikely to break through and go, you know, exponential sort of thing. So in endeavouring to help people be as good as they can and perform as well as they can, really give them the exercises, the endeavour, the confidence, the support, you know, the gusto to get out there and have a really good go, but be realistic. You know, if that's really as good as you're going to get, well, you know, let's be reasonable about it, but let's keep trying. Never thwart anyone's endeavour to try, and that's really important.
No, trying is good. I wonder, like, if there are some situations that you think, even as a coach or as an observer, that it's not going to fly, but this person is still believing and going to harm themselves, or in a manner in academia, what would you do? Because naturally you want to help them. I know that usually you will try to say, look, I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
And there's the reality.
Yeah. I've seen this in away from sport, in a tutoring, teaching situation, a group of, what can we call them, professional executive secretaries, and I was teaching them management, and we, en route to the serious terminal exam, we did a couple of test exams, a couple of papers and that type of thing. And one young lady really, really struggled, and she got quite upset because she was just head down. I can't do this. I'm not prepared for it. And the important thing for me was to stop the pain, you know, to actually say, come on, let's just walk out of here now. Let's not get too upset about it. Let's not wreck what might be happening in 4, 5, 6 weeks' time when we do a proper exam. Let's just walk away from this for now. Let's compose ourselves. Maybe think about it again. Maybe put a little bit more effort into the preparation and then come back stronger. And that's really what it's about. You know, if we're not quite there now, let's prepare ourselves better, but let's come back stronger. But then going on to your other point, if even coming back stronger, they're never going to clear that hurdle, academic or physical or whatever, maybe there are other routes. Maybe there are other things that they can do that would allow them to excel in their own way.
That's powerful. Because you mentioned that you need to walk away.
Yeah.
Which means you need to get a distance from the problem, not be within a problem.
Yeah. Do not torture yourself with a problem. You can, because there's all of these little cliches, you know, wood for the trees and all that type of thing. And sometimes the damage that can be done by allowing someone to experience failure or feel that they are failing unnecessarily and for an extended period is not helpful. Really, if you can walk them away from it, either amend the preparation and go again, or look for something different to do, then, you know, that can be healthy. And there can be an overall healthy, progressive outcome rather than an unhealthy, negative experience. I mean, we're forced with this at the moment in education. Young people leaving school are expected to have GCSE, maths and English at grade 4 or above. Fine, good aspect. Well-intentioned, I'm sure. But some people will always struggle with numeracy to get them up to that level of mathematics, with written communication, with reading. And although we want them to endeavour to improve, and we should, and they should, but it's always going to be a struggle for some people. And yet because we are obliged to put some of these people through resit, they can go through a quite unhealthy and quite painful experience of failure. And we're forcing the hand into that experience again and again, instead of maybe thinking, well, can we demonstrate their communication skills in a different way? Can we demonstrate and assess their numeracy skills in a different way? You know, rather than just having this almost impenetrable problem that's placed in front of them. It's a real issue.
I'm glad you mentioned this. We are trying to measure everyone with some sort of statistical measures. And, you know, it doesn't pan out. And I've seen that when I was a child, and I knew that some people are great with, just as an example, memorizing words, others are memorizing numbers. And I have proof to that. My wife is memorizing numbers instantly. And just to give you the idea how instantly, we walked to a Trafford Centre and there were like plenty of cars. We went to a Trafford Centre, we did things that we needed. We came back to the car. We drove to another store, another thing, because I think we were looking for something for our children. And my wife saying, this car was there. That car was parked in that spot. That was the lady that was walking there with this. And I asked her, you remember all the places? She said, yes. And I'm like, I can't do it. And she said she started very young because she was with her father and was memorizing just out of boredom. And she remembers things like that. I remember things that are being said, for instance. Numbers not correctly.
Sometimes it's patterns, and the patterns can come from words. Sometimes the patterns can come from pictures. Sometimes the patterns are in numbers.
And yet we are sometimes, and there is a second part to what I was trying to reflect. I remember when kids were questioned after they memorized poem, and the only thing that they measured was, have you memorized all the words correctly? Yes, I could do it, and children could do it, but there was one caveat to that. They needed to perform, and that was the problem. Measures. How you can measure people if they're different? I know that we are looking for success factors in organizations, but you are coaching at the same time. And working as an auditor, you are measuring against a set of standards. Do you think like there's a discrepancy or something that is not working in both words? Or maybe there is something like ultimate answer?
Yeah, this can always be difficult because, again, one of these cliches, horses for courses and that type of thing. Sometimes you can have, within an organization, within a department, within the office, you can have what seems to be a steady state, and things are working well, and things are working in an orderly way. People know what they're doing, they know when they're doing it, they know why they're doing it. And that can be great, but it can also be stale. And sometimes when there is a little bit of turnover, one person leaves, another one comes in to replace them, slightly different ideas, slightly different input, different energies, different ways of doing things. It can upset things. But is that a good upset or a bad upset? Does that upset, does that change make people reflect on what they're doing, how, what, why, and maybe consider changing it And does that change deteriorate the product, the performance, or does it improve it? So you've got to think about what people are doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it that way. I mean, this is all off the cuff, you know. I mean, this is an accountant. People think accountants are boring.
Merv, and you can blame me because I remember this Monty Python sketch when the accountant was coming. And so far, nobody remembered that. I think that gives my age as well. But I remember that he wanted to be a lion tamer.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And at the end, it turns out that he cannot be.
Oh yeah. I mean, for years I've gone home and told my wife that I was a piano player in a brothel. She accountancy, your loss.
Your loss. Oh no. My wife used to be an accountant.
Did she really?
Yeah, because of the numbers.
Oh, good.
She used to be, and she was in finance and banking and accountancy, etc.
Oh, good.
She finished, economics in that way, and then moved into human resources. So we can switch. You were coaching, teaching, management.
Yeah.
I really love management, although I'm like a rookie in that space. But when I'm going to organizations, I think that they pretend sometimes they know what management is. And I know that sometimes all of the problems within the organizations, and I bet you have great stories about that, are coming like a bookcases of not knowing things instead of anti-patterns or behaviors. If you add politics to that and fight for position, then we can have different books. But would you agree that very often people are lacking the academic management skills, for instance, and they are not willing because they saw it all?
Yeah, I would go quite strongly with that.
Please.
Yeah. Confirming what you've suggested. Here's one I made earlier. I, for a while, 3 years, worked at a further education college in Liverpool, a really good college. At the time I was there, I think we were working out of about 14 campuses. It was a huge college that had been put together by the amalgamation of several other further education colleges, and some sort of sense had to be brought to bear on it. We had back in the day then, they used to have the further education team that used to come in and do reviews of you. And one team came in and did this review, and were quite scathing because they said, well, if we look across the piece, there's very few managers have actually had any formal management training. Now, that's quite common in organisations. I've seen it in probation, I've seen it in other organisations, I've seen it in prisons. The people in their immediate discipline, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, whether it's sport, whether it's engineering, they are incredibly professionally and experienced in that environment, and they progress up the ladder within that environment. But then, arriving at a certain level in the organisation, it's anticipated that they will have management as one of their tools, that they will be able to manage. And it doesn't always work. Now, we're not saying that management training is the be-all and end-all. Some people have, if you like, inbuilt leadership qualities, inbuilt knowledge of how things should fit in an organisation. Almost like a sort of primitive ability to make things happen in a useful and organised way. But sometimes you do benefit from some formal training. And on that occasion, in that college in Liverpool, it was pointed out that something like less than 20% of the so-called managers had received any formal management training. So something was put in place to try and redeem that. Strangely, or maybe not so strangely, it was pitched at people holding management positions. But the very people that it was pitched at didn't really volunteer to go onto the training. I don't know whether they felt uncomfortable with it, whether they thought it was undermining their experience and abilities. Other people like me jumped onto the training. I benefited from it. It refreshed me on one or two things. But, but others it was almost as if, oh, why do you need us to do that? We've been doing this job for ages. Well, yeah, you may have been doing it for ages, but you might actually be able to do it a little bit better in the future.
Yeah. We don't know all of this.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that people climbing through the ladder.
Yeah.
My take on that, I have two, let's see, recent events. The first one is we saw in organizations that people are being hired, and they might be, at the junior level or sometimes in the middle, and they're being taught how to do the work in this organization. And usually this is how we work, this is how we do, even though we are doing things in not such an optimal way, but we still do it as we do. And then we always did that way, becomes culture. And if there is an innovation needed, we don't need it. And people are scared to be, maybe it will be strong, but they don't want to be exposed with lack of understanding, or understanding that there is a knowledge beyond what we are utilizing in this organization. And then I have an opinion, that's the second angle. Recently, Elon Musk, I've seen that video, maybe it's older, he mentioned that he hates to hire people who finish master degrees, MBAs in management, etc., because he thinks that people should be just doing useful things that works. But how do we know that we are doing not only useful, but in economical way?
That's interesting in itself. I mean, do we suddenly do things in an economical way because a book told us to do it that way? Does it suddenly become so much more efficient because we completed a course in it? Let's not forget, someone that goes on to those courses and teaches on them may not have jumped through the same hoops themselves. They may have done, but it's not necessary. And of course, you've got outliers like Elon Musk. Certainly, there are others that you can point to over time. Richard Branson, these incredible entrepreneurial people who are outliers, because not everyone can have that whiz idea, the energy, the ability to convince people, to give them the backing, to allow them to skill up, build up, and make things happen. Not everyone's got that. Some people have, and they are incredible. And thank goodness there are some people that have those incredible abilities. But for other people, maybe a little bit more staid, you need the steady ship of progression. And sometimes a little bit of an input to sort of correct people's way of thinking, or not necessarily correct, that's the wrong word to use, but to assist in developing their ideas about how things could happen. That can create a valuable return.
It's a big thing to support people, because in organizations usually, maybe let me rephrase that, we meet people who don't want to outshine others by any means necessary. And we know that there are some politics, because I want to climb the ladder, so I need to just be measured that way. But you are saying that to support, to service, and this is very, very interesting, because I believe it was Simon Sinek who mentioned that being of service is really, really what gives people kind of a purpose. When we see that we support others and they grow, you feel like, I'm achieving something, I'm helping. And yes, there are some brilliant people who are maybe better at what they do and we are doing. And I think it's kind of an obligation on our side to just support them because they are better.
Yeah. I mean, there are fast lanes and there are slow lanes on the motorway, and there are fast lanes and slow lanes on progression in organisations, and wherever organisation that is. But sometimes you need things to be done, and you need those things to be done before everyone sort of climbs on the express train to the top. one of the guys that went through his accountancy training with me, he ultimately found a job with the firm that does Brill cream. Now, can you believe in this day and age that products like Brill cream are still around? You know, to me, it sounds like something from the 50s. But yes, those products are there, and they are still there and still making lots of money, to the extent that within the group of companies, they would consolidate their accounts, and it would be, you know, it would be hunky-dory, you know, it would be providing some sort of profit, and then they'd sort of consolidate in the Brill cream turnover, and suddenly the profit would shoot up because there was less money to be spent on it. It was a given an accepted product in many areas, but it was still selling and doing very, very well. But in his experience, he actually ended up working in the States for this company for a while. And he said there were a lot of people there, and culturally within the States, a lot of people who wanted to make that big decision, who wanted to make that big breakthrough. But the thing was, his immediate need of that person was to balance that account, was to clear that suspense, was to put this balance sheet together. Once you've done that, come and talk to me about your big idea for the future. But immediately, that's what I need of you right now. That's what this organisation needs of you. We're not trying to quash your initiative. We're not trying to quash your great, fantastic ideas. But please, just now, can we do this and then have a chat about the Wizzo idea?
I think that's good advice. I mean, very brilliant advice. Yeah. We know that many young professionals or at the entry level that are coming, they have brilliant ideas and they want to change the world. And that, I've been one of these coming into organization and seeing it as an outsider, like, oh, it doesn't work because A, B, C. And then I thought, okay, that's what I need to do here. Well, in fact, I will be failing because first, do what you'll be hired to do. That's colloquialism, but A, B, C will come after 1, 2, 3, which are the tasks that need to be fulfilled. Once you prove the value, that you'll gather some trust, of course, and then maybe on the side, we'll go with some new initiatives. The only problem I've seen is like once I've did 1, 2, 3, they gave me 4, 5, 6, and we never had a chat about ABC. Oh, we had, yeah, it's a brilliant idea, maybe one day. And that was the misalignment about, okay, we need to keep the lights on, but the innovation is something that will help the organization.
Yeah. I get the point that you're making, and that's one of those things to try and avoid quashing initiative. We've got to, whether you're a supervisor, whether you're a manager, whether you're a top manager, you need to encourage initiative. You need to encourage people to put ideas forward. I mean, whether it's in a large firm that can afford to reward through idea, reward and that type of thing, or initiative reward, or whether it's in another company that maybe can't. I mean, at one stage, when I was working for Liverpool City Council, we had advice in from the people that used to run Leyland vehicles, and they'd been through some really torrid times. And they put 1 or 2 things across to us and said, look, we've said one of the reasons we've failed as a company or hit hard times as a company is because we never really looked for initiative. We always thought, oh, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is why we do it, and let's keep doing it. But then people came and took their market, so they had to start thinking about doing it differently. And that's when they really started to push the initiative program. But the difficulty was, by then, they couldn't really offer much in the way of reward to people coming forward with Wizzo ideas. So they got some incredible ideas, absolutely wonderful ideas from people, but they were only able financially to give them token rewards of maybe £10 or something like this, or a book token or something. But some of those ideas that were coming forward were saving them tens of thousands of pounds, or actually earning them, considerably more. So again, it's this caution about battening down the hatches, thinking this is who we are, this is what we do, this is why we do it, how we do it, etc. We've always done it this way, which is a killer. And actually opening the ears, eyes, listening, thinking to new ideas, being receptive. Yeah.
And I'll give you another great example. The example was like, I've been in these organizations which were trying to strive for some innovation. And yes, we need to have a culture of innovation. We need to be just like a startup, rumbling these ideas, but yet we need to deliver first, of course. And I totally understand that. They grew in their model to a certain level and they want to maintain the position, but maintaining sometimes going backwards. And they ask many people saying, you know what, you need to be innovative. You need to come up with ideas to us. And I think that people were scared, like, how I need to come with some ideas. And that's basically just like, tell me a joke and your mind is empty. I think that whole organization was empty of ideas just because they were just obliged to come up with new ideas. Not everyone is an inventor. And we know that ideas, I won all the arguments in the shower, that I never had. And it's like, it's coming when you're not working, basically.
Yeah. It's one of those things. And again, horses for courses. You need people to create the platform for the organization to work from. You need people to possibly mundanely, possibly boringly, to maintain that platform. But then you need other people on top of that platform to be the creative ones, to think about, well, what do we do now? What do we do next? Why do we do it next? Why do we do it better? All of those things. You can walk into any organization and it doesn't take long to see the backbone, the spinal cord of the organization that keep the organization going come what may. The people that work to maintain the platform from which that organization works. But then also you've got the brilliant people that take it on. So again, using the analogy of a further education college, you go into a further education college, yes, you'll have a finance and resources committee. And what's their main concern? To see that there's sufficient money to pay the staff, there's sufficient money to keep a roof over their head, there's sufficient money to pay the energy bill, so that you're not going to get in trouble. You can keep people warm when they come to study with you. You can keep them dry because there's not a hole in the roof. You've got staff to actually do the teaching and training because you're paying them. So you've got people doing all of those backbone things, keeping the underpinning platform for delivery to be there. But then you need the people with the ear to the ground, the ones with their 1 foot inside the camp, 1 foot over the organisational boundary into the outside environment, to think, well, are we still making a product here that the outside world wants? If we're still trying to sell course A when its attendance has been dropping away from 62 years ago, 30 last year, 10 this year, is that really the product is that really the course that people outside there want? When you go and speak to people outside there and outside in the environment, employers, others, and they'll say, what we'd really like is a course to do A or B or C. And we know that a similar company to us or a similar service to us needs the same sort of thing. And you think, well, why didn't we spot that? Well, because you didn't go and talk to the people, listen to what they were saying. It's a little bit like Keir Starmer and the Prime Minister the other night. If you listen to the people, if you got down there and talked to the people more often, you might be a bit more in touch with them. It was that type of scenario. Go and find out what the market needs and then adjust. Instead of trying to sell an old product because we've always sold that product, go and find the new product, go and find the new course that they need, not just want, but need, and then deliver it. Set out your stall to deliver it.
It's so easy when you said that. And I know it's easy because literally if you go and ask people, what is your problem? And you sort out this problem, they will be willing to pay for it. I mean, maybe if you don't put the price tag.
Well, you hit a key thing there with maybe, because some of the people out there don't actually know what they need. Now that sounds very uppish, doesn't it? Come on, you people from the college, you're going to come and tell us what we need. Well, actually, in some cases, yes. I mean, a colleague working in a firm in Warrington, they have a team of welders, but all of those welders are into their early 60s and about to retire over the next 2 years. Great, fine. So what's your succession plan? Are you still hoping to do the same sort of work? Well, yes, we were intending to. Still sort of manufacturing, fabricating the same sort of product? Yes, that's what we're intending to. So have you got any apprentices under training now so that over the next 2 years, as Fred and Sid and old Bill over there start to head towards retirement, you've got some younger people ready to pick up the cudgels and make sure you can still do business? Hadn't really thought about that. And you'd be embarrassed at how many small to medium-sized enterprises just do not think on that line. So we're finding as a college that we're not just doing the management issues of planning forward for ourselves, we're helping employers, smaller employers particularly, do some planning and do some succession planning, and all with good cause. They've not had to think that way in the past. They've maybe always been able to recruit a skilled person when they needed to. But the sad thing is, some of those wonderful, incredible, skilled persons are just not there in the same abundant supply that they used to be. So you've got to do something about it now to secure that person for the future.
I heard that many small, medium organizations right now are either going to be sold or closed because we don't have next workforce, for lack of a better term. I was thinking like you can buy them. The model is there. It's just like you need capabilities for that kind of capacity and once set. But isn't it that these people missed this planning for future because they were so tied in their work? And that's coming back to the idea that we climb the ladder because we do, and we are doing our job better, more efficiently, and maybe we can scale a little bit. Maybe we can just oversee people who are just entering, but we are still not having these skills that are setting as a corporation, or maybe some strategic skills that usually you would obtain in academia, transfer it, and then have this holistic view how operation works, how innovation works, how strategic planning should be, how HR works in that case, how to not only maintain clientele, but at the same time how to go into, blue ocean, red ocean, maybe approach. Don't you think that we are, because they grew by doing their job better and better, they never needed to look beyond their activities on day-to-day?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. This is one of those things that many organizations, successful organizations, are so busy doing what they do and doing it well, they don't always have the time or inclination or capacity to look over the fence at what's coming next. And what's coming next can be a newer line of production from a competitor that's just going to sweep you out of your comfortable role. And this is a key thing. I mean, some organizations, they will get to a certain size and think, we've cornered the market, we're comfortable at this size, we can keep going, we can keep doing what we're doing and doing it very well. And in the short term, even the medium term, that might be good enough. In the long term, it's a bit of a risky policy. It's almost like the monopoly argument. You could be a very, very well-established firm. You've got a great customer there. They give you something like 80% of your turnover. Oh, things are hunky-dory. But if that customer suddenly decides they're going out of business, or they want to go elsewhere, or they've been swallowed up by a bigger organisation that secures its supply from elsewhere, you're left in no man's land, having lost 80% of your turnover. And that's a really risky position to be in. So, you've got to secure this balanced market, innovation, looking over the fence to secure the next part of your market, looking over your shoulder to see where your supply of skills is going to come from to help you deliver to that market, which might be a different market. It might be a new market. So you might be recruiting new skills. But it's this mixture of supply, whether we're talking supply of space for you to operate from, people to do that operation for you, money to fund the operation, all of those different things, even the equipment, the kit to allow you to do these things. I mean, who would have thought 20 years ago that we would have 3D printers that could do so many clever things? Those 3D printers have probably seen off several jobs because they can do things that other people would have had to work hard to do. You think about in my time, I worked for organisations that had a floor of a building with draftspersons. I'm tempted to say draftsmen, but they were draftspersons because some of them were very, very good. But then came along CAD/CAM, computer-aided design, computer-aided engineering, and all of these things. You still needed design people to get the data in. You still needed design people to maintain and to make adaptations, but you needed fewer of them. But that maybe meant that you could push people onto other duties. I've seen training and retraining. There was a time in the atomic industry that we had an absolute wealth of engineers because we'd had apprentice training schools to help create really good engineers. Plus, we did the milk round of the universities and recruited the best scientists, engineers and technologists. We did. But, beyond a point, that supply sort of started to dry up. And what we found was that we maybe needed to retrain some of our existing engineers. So you'd be asking for volunteers, tried and tested, good, wholesome engineers that had been working for you, that knew the industry, but you maybe needed to retrain them as chemical engineers because that's where the need was at that point in time. I owe my career to sensible, forward thinking about staff planning, about resource planning. And in that particular industry, if you looked across the years, we still had programs that were going to take 15, 20 years to fully deliver. The decision tree in atomic energy can stretch out 15 years because you've got to get permission to do things. You've then got to organise how you're going to do it, who's going to do it, who's going to pay for it. All of those things, these are long-term affairs. And then, of course, because it's atomic, the building and the fabrication has got to be of the very highest standards. So you'd look at the team of people that you'd got, and because there'd been government stop-go campaigns through funding through the 60s, the 70s, you could see a binodal distribution of staff across technicians, scientists, engineers, HR, accountancy, everything. There was this binodal distribution, the stop-go campaigns of public funding or no public funding. And it looked quite obvious to people that, hey, a lot of these very good and very experienced people are going to fall off the cliff in the next 5 years. So what was put in place was a remedial recruitment campaign, a retraining campaign, and some additional recruitment and training from outside. So I go in there as a raw young clerk working in accounts and get the opportunity to train as an accountant. Happy days. And that's where I meant at the very start of this conversation, when I said that people like me, 50s kids, coming up, growing up into employment in the early 70s, mid-70s, we had opportunities that a lot of young people now will maybe not have. We had the opportunity of the linear career within an organisation, of the career outside of that organisation if you wanted to move around. A lot of the people coming up now, if they want to have a career as such, they're going to have to be very prepared to be very mobile, not just across different organisations, across different disciplines, and constantly retraining and uptraining and upskilling. It's a different environment. It's a faster moving environment. It's quite an exciting environment. At 69, I'd love to be 60. At 60, I'd love to be 50. At 50, I'd love to be 40. But, hey, you can't turn the clock back that way. But for some of the youngsters, good luck to them. I just hope things work for them the way it worked for me.
Yes, it is difficult. I remember that usually you had like one, maybe two organizations in your CV, and you had like maybe 5 titles because you climbed the ladder. Now you are moving horizontally, and then you are reinventing yourself in your career. And I've been through that point in my life already a couple of or more times. And I think it is unsettling for some because we need this long-term planning of mortgages, of kids, etc. While on the other hand, there's just chaos. And a new technology like AI, like 3D printing, is just changing everything. And your skills are becoming obsolete very quickly. And literally 5 years' time, it seems like 30 some years ago, if it comes to what you learned and what you need to learn next. It is difficult times. On the other hand, we have so opportunities. And you mentioned 3D printing. I remember when it was like announced, this is 3D printing and it's really great. And then one of the case study was saying, we are sending people to space. Great. And usually they had like, 2 set of tools, 2 set of some spare equipment or parts. Now they have printers because if something broke, we'll print it. Yeah. So
it's quite incredible.
Yeah,
it's quite incredible. But it's not to be underestimated. I mean, I'm sufficiently invested in education to believe in its value. And I would argue quite strongly that no training or education is ever wasted. And therefore, yes, something that we learned maybe 30 years ago might be, it might have cobwebs on it by now. And it may have needed to be topped up and changed. But the thing is, from doing that training, from doing that education, you've got the mind that adapts and accepts education and training and change. And then it forms a very, very good platform for subsequent change to be built on. It's not as though you've got a shaky platform to establish change on. You've got a very, very good grounding, firm basis to accept further education, further training, further change, and that mind that goes with it, that accepts change rather than being threatened by it or rejecting it. There's only so many king canoes that can get drowned, before we've got to realise that, hey, change is one of those things.
No, changes continues. It's always, and I'm really glad you mentioned that. You need this solid foundation. It's like your house, and you need to have it solid. Otherwise, it will be very shaky, and the heaviest thing on the top will just collapse this house. And this is coming back to learning that you need to have this ground learning done. And we are going to school, I was told, just not to make the mistakes that have been already made.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair point, because in any organizations, there are some philosophies that we might utilize. Maybe something won't work. Maybe, we'll say that, oh, Drucker, you are wrong. We are doing things differently in here. And maybe for some peculiar reasons, something different works. But if we don't have this foundation, sooner or later, our house of cards will become very dangerous for the organization.
Yeah. It's very interesting you mentioned it that way, because just as you were saying it tricked off a thought with me. But how many organizations have we worked in where you've said, hey, they tried that before, it didn't work for these reasons, that's not the best route for us to follow. But hey, as you were saying it, I thought, well, maybe it didn't work last time, but just maybe, because we're a different organization, in a different situation, in a different time, with different facilities at our disposal, maybe it could work now. And it's one of those things, you think back to some of the riots and some of the terrible things that have gone on in this country, when the print business and the newspaper business was changed in a major way. But increasingly, the newspaper business now is slowly but surely ebbing away, because everyone's reading stuff online, or everyone's getting fed stuff online. So it's different. And maybe that there can be a recoil to think, well, we tried it then, it didn't work then, but we're in a different situation now. We've got different people at the helm now. We've got different people performing now. And we've got different facilities. Maybe an idea back then that failed or was thrown out because it just didn't work well enough could be reconsidered in a different light now, and maybe be feasible.
Oh, I'm digesting it, and I'm really liking it, because I'll just try to play back. It looks like maybe they failed with whatever it was, the initiative.
Yeah.
Because it was one person that wasn't there, like you, for instance. Yeah. Maybe you can always answer like, you didn't succeed because it wasn't me. And maybe that's true, because I'm here to support. On the other hand, maybe it was not the right time. Maybe it was too early. Technology was not supporting. Maybe we needed to get people from abroad, for instance, with different mindset that will just spark some innovation, just as an idea. Or maybe we should just reflect what happened that it didn't work.
Yeah.
Maybe there was something. Oh, that's a very fancy.
It gives me a beard.
Oh. Oh, good. Maybe we needed to reflect, find out why it didn't happen. And that takes me, idea was great. We still believe that we should be in that place as an organization. Yeah. So we are planning ahead. We have this, strategic thinking of 5 years or even decades. Our mission is still the same, like for a newspaper, to share the information in a way that we can reach. And paper, it was one of the ways. Now we have mobile phones. Maybe we can just repurpose the medium a little bit, or maybe we can just change the medium. Well, in fact, we failed with the execution, maybe. Maybe it is that, okay, we had this pioneering people who are just pioneers, and they had some ideas how the new initiative will put this organization with the competitive edge and so forth.
Yeah.
But we missed the balance between people who are very operational, yet open to governing this and executing this great idea.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, whether we're talking about the technology aspect of it or whether we're talking about the management of the organizations that would develop that technology, someone way back probably had some whizzo idea about computing. But back in the day, they probably didn't have the technology that we have now, the fibers, the sort of basis to micro-produce, all of those things. And, if you think back to someone sat at a mechanical comptometer, clicking away, bashing away at things, yes, they were endeavouring to do the same things, but with different technology. The advance to take that forward at that time, even though someone maybe had the inkling of an idea as to how it could be done, the materials were not there to support it. We just didn't have those facilities. We didn't have that kit at that point in time. You think about electric cars. How many decades have people been talking about electric cars? But it hasn't really made that step forward until we really got the battery technology that made it more feasible, until we got the general acceptance of plastic and fabricated bodywork to make it lighter, to make it more feasible. All of those things. I mean, the concept probably 50 years ago of a car without a bumper would have been, oh, goodness me, that's incredibly dangerous. How could you possibly take that on the road? The concept of, 60 years ago, obligatory seat belting, all of those things. And yet now they're commonplace. I mean, I can remember one of the first cars I saw in Warrington with the back end of it was plastic. I think it was an early Honda or an early Suzuki. And people were thinking, good grief, that makes it so much lighter. That's really clever. Will it fade? Will the paintwork fade differently to the rest? No, it didn't. And it's just a matter of advance and how quickly you can advance, and whether you, in making the facilitation advance technologically, then look over your shoulder again and think, well, hey, that was a good idea then. Is it more feasible now? And it's that type of issue.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Trying to just pause some innovations.
Yeah.
Don't dismantle them, but just look what needs to be in place so we can succeed with this.
Yeah.
So it's not only innovations, not only operations, it is leveraging all these different aspects of enterprising. Think, oh, it's brilliant. But that was like, we passed the part of casual, the business talk, and I really enjoyed that. But I have some more private scope to ask you. Running.
Oh, running.
Running was difficult for myself.
Yeah.
I was always good at the short distances as a kid, and I always wanted to play, not to run, because running was like run for time, run for your life, or run with your colleague. And this competitiveness was great.
Yeah.
Then I moved into my running for some of distances. For you, it's no distance, but I do run like a little bit. I would say 5 to 10, 11 extreme. And I remember our conversation, and you mentioned that at some point I needed to descale my running and just change the distance. And you said, I'll just wake up, 6 a.m. or even earlier, I remember, and just run 10K. And I'm like, I'll be preparing myself weeks to just wake up at that time and do that distance. Tell me about it. How that happened?
Well, it's one of those things. One, you've got your natural build, and when I'm 5'5" and sort of 8¼ stone, there's no weight to carry. So running, it's not as though I'm going to be carrying some bags of sugar tied around my waist or anything like that. So that aspect of it's easy. The metabolism, the lungs seem to be good. The legs seem to be good. Running is something that comes quite naturally to me. Unfortunately, with age, it is getting slower. I did a 10K the other week at 50 minutes, which was, a personal worst. That was so bad. It really was so bad. Mind you, one of my son's friends from school came up and said, it's the first time I beat you. I said, well, yeah, you're 38, I'm 69. He said, yeah, it's only taken me 15 years since I started running to beat you. But, yeah, hey, these things happen. Yeah, there's, even at my age, there's still an element of competitiveness. But, yeah, I still enjoy running. I'm still healthy from it. There's lots and lots of positives about running, but it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. Some people find it boring. Maybe that's why I'm an accountant. Some people would argue, hey, come on, there's got to be something better. Well, hey, whatever it is that's better, go and do it. Enjoy it. Whether it's golf, a good walk spoiled, whether it's football, whether it's, even for people my age now, there was walking football. Oh, wow, walking football. But I know people who are taking part in it and really, really getting a lift from it. There's swimming, there's so many things. Cycling's a bit dangerous.
Yeah, I agree.
I love cycling, I really do. But I just don't feel safe on the roads. So if there's anyone out there that can make the roads safer, I'll come and cycle with them. But yeah, it's just always been there since the mid-60s. Well, I think I started running when I was probably about 26. I got out of breath, drying myself after a bath, and thought, yeah, you're not in very good shape here. You maybe need to do some exercise. So yeah,
And you tried again?
Yeah, well, I'd grown big then. I was I think I'd gone up to 9.5 stone. Goodness me, that's the biggest I've ever been. I keep telling people when I first started running, I was 6'2", and I'm down to 5'5" now. But hey, that's what happens.
Oh gosh, you mentioned 50 for 10K.
Yeah,
that's kind of close to my personal best. I did that in 1 hour.
It's a long time since I did 33 minutes for it. Let's put it that way.
All right.
Yeah.
No. I run slowly right now. I've been told that, it's good to run slow. I'm like, yeah, I'm just running as I'm running. I'm trying to do it every day, and like 1 hour, uphill, downhill. I'm doing it just to do it, with a podcast or with something with thoughts. And I think I would never be a good distance runner because, I don't know, it's just this one of these abilities, but I enjoy doing what I'm doing, and I'm not running against time. And I know that sometimes, people are passing me, and I'm enjoying my just run as I enjoy my walk. But I find out I can run or walk forever with that tempo.
Yeah,
just
that's good.
Running until my feet hurts or something happens to shoes. But it's not tiring me anymore. And I think that's a good point. I can just do it. So
that's good.
Yeah,
it's very good. Yeah, I think the European guidance on this is that people should endeavour to do about 150 minutes of exercise each week, and at least 2 of those chunks of that exercise should be for something like 30 minutes plus, and that should be where they actually get themselves to breathing heavily, and that's thought to be a good and wholesome way of doing the exercise and keeping themselves to put it. And they even include in that exercise things like gardening, because, gardening, the physicality of gardening can be quite heavy, digging, brushing, all of those things. So, yeah, if this is what it takes to keep people healthy, upright, so that they're still on the pins for as long as we can manage that, or even for those people who don't walk or can't walk, there are things that can keep them agile, healthy, and doing things. And along with healthy body comes healthy mind.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I have 2 daughters. One is like overactive. I think that she took it from me, and she
From
wants,
you.
Yeah, she wants to run and she wants to do everything. Gymnastics, now this and that. But what scares me, my older daughter is as well very active. She's more patient and more careful with all the movements. And she was martial artist at some point, so, that's good. However, I'm seeing tendency among kids sitting with mobile phones and not even chatting like we are chatting. I think that will, for them, it might be that it will be very uncomfortable to just sit and talk instead of typing words in a passive-aggressive manner with icons, emojis, and so forth. You mentioned how to keep people focused, how to find what triggers them. Is there any advice for parents like me who are having teenagers at home to spark interest in exercises? She doesn't have a problem with learning. She's into learning very much, but I want her to be healthy, not only with mind, but also in some activities. And what could I say? You have experience with dealing with young athletes, but I believe that they wanted to be athletes.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I have a granddaughter, a 14-year-old, and yes, the mobile phone would have to be surgically removed from her. You know, there's no two ways about that. So it is a different generation. And the thing is, that generation would feel deprived if you took the phone away, you know, even for a short duration. You know, how could you possibly do that to me? You know, my world will fall apart. Yeah, that aspect of the world might take a sort of temporary respite. You know, it might be good for you. But other aspects, yeah, my granddaughter used to go to gym rather like yours, and those are good, wholesome things. I think about some of her peers, some of her friends at school. Some of the lads are still playing football. Increasingly, some of the girls are getting engaged in football, and they're very good at it. Over in Warrington, we've got a group there of quite excellent young female rugby players. They are, they are so good, and not just physically strong and fast and good, but the actual skills that these young people are developing are quite incredible. But it's just a matter of, well, those are the ones that have made the choice for a physical route, for an exercise route, for a sporting route. What do we do, as you've asked, for those that have maybe not chosen that route? And that's where we've really got this task of trying to convince people, again, to look ahead. It's not just about now. It's not just about, oh, you know, I enjoy having my convenience food meal because, yeah, it tastes great. Well, it does with all that salt and sugar on it. Of course it tastes great. You know, both of those are taste enhancers. It tastes fantastic. You know, but it's not always the best option. I'm not going to decry any of the people that manufacture or sell or distribute such goods, because they do taste fantastic, but only from time to time. Yeah, but the thing is, it's not the basis of your diet, and you know, sometimes it's good to vary that and have other things, and sometimes it's good to vary which settee you sit on while you're playing with your mobile phone, even if it means walking from A to B, even if it means getting on a bike to go and see your friend, even if it means getting on a bus to go and see your friend instead of requiring parents' taxi, you know, and this type of thing. And it's just re-engaging the idea of exercise to a generation which quite often have almost like avoided or rejected exercise. And exercise isn't the only thing. I mean, it's self-perception. Instead of being told through a picture in a magazine or through social media, this is how you should look, this is how you must look. If you don't look this way, you're not one of the in crowd. Well, stuff the in crowd, you know. I'm me. I'm an individual. Yes, I belong to a group of adolescents. I belong to a group of school people. I belong to a group of young people. I belong to a group of mobile phone users, etc., etc., etc. But there's no need to wear that as a brand. You know, you are still an individual. You know, you've got your own thoughts, you've got your own ways, you've got your own tastes. And hey, be confident enough to go with it. I think it's key.
Yeah, this confidence is hard to, I mean, it's easier for us. It comes with age when you realize that I don't care really.
Yeah.
But when you mention branding, people want to belong to some tribes.
Yeah.
Because of commonalities, interests, and because we can share experiences. Maybe we can validate our experiences or just check if we are not insane yet. But they are being hit with these brands, and it is different brand. It is brand of clothes manufacturers, designers, sometimes musicians, and I don't have problem with that. People sometimes aligned because the philosophy of the company is very much, and their values are interconnected with values I do represent, and I would like to manifest that. But they are trying to be unified sometimes to a level that they'll lose their individualism, and that's scary. They want to fit in by all means necessary, losing their owns. You opened my eyes when you mentioned about the phones, that we are trying by surgically removing the phone.
Yeah.
And we are taking from kids something that is so important, something that is like it's part of them. And that reminds me very common picture, and I hope that you will just agree with me. Very often we've been taken, I mean books were taken from us. It's not time for reading, and I believe you are one of these guys, and there are plenty like of our listeners who are just under the pillow or under someone reading with the torch or something, even just 2 pages more, 3 pages more. Isn't it the same thing that it gives us something, the books, for instance, and these kids are having the phones and they are just attached because there is so much things over there?
I get exactly where you're coming from. Some of those things are healthy. Some of those things, you might think that the young person is addicted to them, but they can still make a healthy input to that child or to that young person and who they are and what they know and how they know it and where they got it from. But there are some things that are just unhealthy. I mean, you mentioned almost like the peer pressure. Well, we've always argued the issue of peer pressure, where some people are saying, well, hey, why don't you do this with us? Why don't you come with us? Why don't you come to this gig, listen to this band, wear these clothes? And that's peer pressure from the outside. But increasingly now what we're seeing is peer pressure from the inside, where the individual, where the one person is so desperate to be in with the in crowd, they're almost volunteering things without encouragement. I mean, just as you describe, the things we want people to be, the healthy things we want people to be involved with. The one that came up to me recently was vaping, and this desire of a young person to vape. And you thought, well, why? Why do you want to vape? Oh, well, it'll help me when I'm anxious. Well, okay. So in that case, I'll tell you what. Yes, you can vape. I'll hold on to the vape for you. And when you're feeling anxious, come and ask me for it. And then they said, well, oh, no, that won't work. She said, well, why is that? Oh, well, I want to have it at my disposal. Why is that? And quite simply, it's because they want to fit in with the in crowd. Yeah. And something like vaping has become almost like a social order, a social activity, something that we do with our pals. Well, that's actually quite dangerous. And that's reducing, again, the individual's right and ability to think for themselves and to do things for themselves. They're just slotting into, what others do without necessarily being encouraged to do it, but just doing it anyway because they want to fit. And you just think, oh, come on, be bigger than that. Please, be bigger than that. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the reading under the blankets and all that sort of thing. At the very start of the conversation, I said, I messed about at school. I don't think I read a book probably until I left high school. I think I maybe read 2 or 3 novels when I was going through high school, that type of thing. If I see a novel now, I'm not particularly inclined to pick it up.
Don't blame you.
Doesn't do anything for me at all. If I see a textbook, I can't leave it alone. If I see a textbook, I've got to see who wrote it, who were the contributors, what their background was, where they came from, what they did. I can't resist that.
I can relate.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you, I can't read poem because no value, but user guide, yes, please. It gives me something. It sparks curiosity, but at the same time, it feeds it.
Yeah.
So it's like a perpetuum mobile and so forth. With these kids and vape, that's a very good example because we know it's harmful.
Yeah.
It is harmful. But it is like Josh and I, we have same tractors. We have a club of tractors. So they exchange this toy into something, dangerous because marketing and so forth.
Yeah.
But as adults, we can see that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, our neighbor has a new car. Oh, our neighbor has a refurbishment. Oh, they have a great patio. Oh, Lucinda does have a new flowers in the garden.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I don't have these flowers, and that gives me idea of very old series of what people would say.
Yeah.
So
Keeping
up the appearances, we are not far off from these kids still. So I think that, I'm seeing it as we need some gadget or some artifact for belonging.
Yeah.
And we think that we need this artifact instead of manifesting ourselves.
Yeah. I maybe giving away a little bit too much of my background there, but I've never been wealthy enough to pursue keeping up with the Joneses. So I've never actually bothered. So I'm very much me.
And people are thinking, he does have all of that. He figured it all. He does have something that, because being yourself, it's the most difficult part for some.
Yeah.
And for others, all the roles are being taken. I think that was Oscar Wilde who mentioned that. But it's me.
Yeah.
You see what you get what you see, and that's it really.
Yeah.
And
I know, and you're right. We all bend here and there to fit in. Yeah, of course we do. But I don't think my bank account bends far enough to keep up with the Joneses. I don't think it ever has done.
No, there's always someone who is like with a bigger account, bigger house, a better title, and so. But there's no point in that.
And I have no envy about those things. I'm happy with my life.
I'm envy about your score in running.
Okay.
Never went below 1 hour yet, so I don't think it will happen.
Oh dear. Yeah, some of the guys that I run with have done embarrassing times in the past, and you just sort of say, "Well, you're clearly a better runner than I was."
We've been through professionalism. We've been through our private endeavors, and I'm really glad you shared that. And I'm seeing how these things are interconnected. And the title of the podcast itself, the brand name is "Are You Like Me?" And I'm seeing these commonalities, and you are opening my eyes on, even mobiles, how I should be treating it, and so forth. But if there is one thing, one artifact, gadget, toy, poem, textbook, song, quote that made you, or you can recall, that was kind of a pivotal or help you to pursue your life the way you did, or maybe as an advice how to be yourself, or whatever it is, if there is something like that, could you share it?
This is an interesting one, because I had to do a little bit of a presentation not so long since, and something that came back to me was that, and I referred to it slightly earlier before when I said, you leave school, suddenly you've got to grow up, you've got to get a job because, hey, things are getting serious. And one of the things that came back to me from that experience and experience through life was, yes, at that point in time, education found me because I was given the opportunity to go to college to do certain things. So yes, that opportunity was laid at my disposal. That opportunity found me. Education found me. What I found was learning, and that's the quote that I've started to use quite a bit, because I think it's very, very true, and it's very simple. But yes, education found me. What I found was learning, and it's once you've got that hunger to learn, it doesn't go away.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It doesn't go away,
No.
and that's a good and healthy thing. Yeah, it really is.
You need to be careful, because there is a danger that you'll be like, oh, more, which is a good thing. Like, oh, that's deep, and I'm really glad you shared that. Do you think that if you wouldn't do it, things will be completely different, or you'll end in the same place with this learning attitude, maybe later in a different manner?
It's interesting. When I did my first degree 100 years ago at Preston Polytechnic night school, one of the guys there that was one of my classmates sort of said, "You won't be satisfied until you've got a doctorate." And yeah, I guess I'm still at that point. Later, when I was doing an Open University course, one of the things, and it was based around creativity, and you sort of had to do this sort of self-review on yourself. And yeah, I visited this idea of going back and wanting to learn and wanting to improve and wanting to gain the qualification and feel good. But then realizing that that was short-lived until next time when I wanted to get something that was more advanced. And then next time when I wanted to get something that was more advanced. And it sounds almost addictive, but I guess in some respects, learning can be addictive. But that's not such a bad addiction to have.
No, brain is hungry.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But is there any question I should ask, but I didn't?
I'm very relieved you've stayed there. No, I think that's a healthy discussion, and I'm just intrigued as to just how much of this is going to have to find its way to the cutting room floor, so that you select the good bits and leave the rest.
I'll just cut the camera for you.
Yeah.
Rest was gold.
Oh, it's great fun.